So what we're dealing with yesterday had to do with worldviews, and we talked about a scientific, naturalistic, materialistic worldview with its attendant, what we call corollaries. Corollaries of that kind of worldview, the things that come out of that kind of worldview. Talk about atheism, relativism, agnosticism, tolerance, and syncretism, liberalism, and pragmatism. And then we went to the second worldview, which is mystical, animist, spiritualist worldview, and how they view the concepts of right and wrong as being that which pleases or displeases the spirit world. Choices have consequences. They talk about curse and blessing motif, so that you are dealing with fate, karma, and the inevitability of some situations, fatalism if you like. But in all these things, if you offend or come on the wrong side of this equation, there is a path for redemption. There's a path for redemption, and usually it is maybe an animal sacrifice. In modern Christian theology and churchmanship, it can take the form of planting seed, and maybe Mary Masha, you as having some material there to work with respect to your exegetical, was it exegetical or pastoral paper? Pastoral. In terms of the seed thing, it comes under this path for redemption, or that kind of stuff there. Then the result of such a worldview is a highly regulated religion, or a regulated ethic, overly regulated, heavily regulated, so that you have a works religion, a works salvation. But then the third worldview was the modern, postmodern, and post-Christian worldviews. We talked about the modern worldview then being based upon two things. One, science. Two, reason. And that then drove humanity, as we know it, to what they would have loved to think of as norms and universally accepted rules. Therefore, the emergence of such bodies as the United Nations, as the International Monetary Fund, IMF, the World Bank, together then being called the Bretton Woods institutions, because people felt science and reason could unite us on some basic principles which can be universally acceptable. They transcend culture, geography, religion, and so on and so forth. But you see, science and reason could not explain everything, and it could not forestall such things as world war, the human bigotry and depravity as was displayed by the Third Reich of Adolf Hitler, and men like Benito Mussolini in Italy. Then you had Joseph Stalin in Russia, and then the world dictators. We had Idi Amin, for example, emerged much later, and such dictatorships and horrific ideas. The experiments of democracy and socialism, the West versus the East, all those experiments came to naught. And so men were disillusioned. They began to question philosophy, question science, question reality, question what was then called fact. Nothing became established any longer, and that launched us into what we then describe as the postmodern era, where rules don't apply because rules are proven that they fail time and again. The social experiments, political experiments, economic experiments aren't to be trusted as such. They have proven themselves to be impotent in the face of the challenges that humanity continues to grapple with. And so they say man is independent, man must choose for himself, man must not be subjected to some rules or standards. Whatever the man feels is right is right. And so we were in the postmodern era by that stroke. But time has come then, and time has passed, where Christianity itself, being then the dominant religion in the world, was considered not just an impediment to human progress, but very much the enemy of human progress. And so the fight then has been to exterminate, if they could, the Christian faith, the onslaught of militant atheism. Militant atheism. Talking about Richard Dawkins, I'm talking about Stephen Hawking, I'm talking about such atheists who have made a campaign in the sense of dethroning, if they could, and exterminating the God of the Bible and the Christian faith, if at all. And so the intelligentsia, the halls of academia, and the political leaders of our days are running almost in a race, overdoing each other in who will bash Christianity the loudest. We are in a post-Christian culture. That's where we are. So this is a worldview. Christianity is the enemy. Lift up the Bible, they tell you that's the enemy of progress. Speak of Christ, they tell you, yeah, here they are, the enemies of human development, and so on and so forth. And so we discussed that then. Now, when we're talking about Christian or a biblical worldview, and I'm just going to run a ground which we've run before here. I think in one of the lectures that I've gone before, we ran this lecture. That the Christian biblical worldview, which is the fourth we're discussing now, right? We've discussed 3, now we are on this 4th one, is regulated within a certain framework. The Christian, the biblical worldview is regulated within a certain framework. They are prime movers, if you like, of biblical ethics. They are the unseen, even the unspoken, fundamental drivers of our ethics as Christians, as people who believe in the Bible. All right. So we're saying when a Christian is called to live a certain life, to respond to situations in a certain way, for example, when there is a problem, say of coronavirus, all right, how does a Christian respond to that? The unbeliever responds a certain way. The naturalist, the scientist, the materialist responds a certain way. The mystic, the spiritualist, the animist will respond with a blessing and curse motif. It's a curse, this one. The Christian responds in a certain way. We say he understands the science behind it, that this in fact is a virus, is a living organism. They accept that, but they also know that this organism is ultimately created by who? By God. And so whatever solutions, whatever answers that we have to work out in the context of this world pandemic now is informed by our Christian framework. Now I want to discuss those frameworks now that then envelop and motivate our ethic. Number 1, a higher personal authority. Like I said, we've discussed this before, I'm just running that ground again. A higher personal authority. I want you to underline that word personal, right? A higher personal authority. And underline the word personal. You see, The naturalist does not think of a higher personal authority. For example, we are here, there is nothing above us. So let's deal with what we've got to deal with here and now. Beyond a virus which is called corona, or COVID-19, I think they call it technically. Beyond that virus, which appears to have crowns, and therefore the word corona, from the word crown, Latin for crown, corona, virus. They don't know anything more. They will not ask the question and say, is there something of God here? Is there a higher authority? Is there a prime mover behind these things? Now, we've had wildfires, horrendous. I mean, I was watching those things on TV and they're hard to see. Kangaroos and pandas and sloths dying, being burnt alive. Man, one lady said it was like living in hell. And that fire engulfed much of, part of Australia. Sorry. And sometimes you have those same fires in California, United States. Now, the naturalist, the scientist, will explain that as global warming, climate change. That's all there is to it. So what should we do? Let's limit greenhouse emissions. Let's deal with less carbon emission into the atmosphere. The ozone layer is being depleted and so on and so forth. This is all they can explain. But is there another high authority who is responsible for this world? Who in fact, Job says, commands the ocean and the sea. You can only come this far. And if he doesn't command it to stop there, the waters themselves will cover the earth. But every morning, every evening, every minute, every second, God says, no, you will remain there. And the scientists themselves are telling us, if the sun could only come down an inch, if the sun could only come down an inch, there would be no life on earth. God keeps it there. See what I'm saying? So our ethic then is informed with this reality that there is a higher personal authority. So it's not just a higher authority, that there is someone, if you like something, we say someone, okay? But there is something out there that is larger than us, that is bigger than us, that is wiser than us, that is more powerful than us, that in fact, that higher thing, we say it's a person, we say it's a being, ultimately has control over everything that happens in the world. So that's the first thing. So we know there's a design, isn't it? We know there's a purpose. Coronavirus has come, there's a purpose. There's something God is doing. A personal tragedy has come on my life. I am not saying, why me? The question should be, why not me? Why am I better than the others? We're going through the same. So the question is not why me, the question is, God, what are you doing in this situation? For we read as a Christian in Romans chapter 8, verse 28, now we know. Now we know. You're not guessing. Now we know that all things, how many things? All. Work together for good to they that love the Lord. It's in the hands of God. So that helps us in terms of how we react to situations, how we react to ideas. So this person has come before you. They have lost a child. Do you say Satan has overrun them? Do you say, don't worry about it, this is the earth cleaning itself, as scientists sometimes will say. Death is simply natural forces of attrition. The earth is regenerating itself by excreting some of its constituent elements, and we, human beings, are only parts of those constituent elements. So when somebody dies, it's like you going to the toilet and taking out some of those wastes out of your body. The earth is doing the same when we die. No, we say there is someone ultimately who decides when I am born and when I live. And when I get sick, there is a purpose being worked out in the situation. Do you see then our framework is different because of this high authority? Also our counseling is different. We do not say, okay, so what mistakes did you do? Which was the problem, you remember? I think in Luke chapter 9. This blind man, the disciple says, Jesus, Lord, who sinned? Is it this man or the parents? Because for them, almost that other third world you talked about, the animist, spiritualist, cause and effect, there must be something. And Jesus says, no, neither. But that the glory of God may be revealed. There's a purpose here. So we respond to situations from a Christian ethical standpoint, but that standpoint is shaped and controlled by this reality that there is a higher power which ultimately controls everything and has a purpose in everything we're going through. But I said underline the word personal, didn't I? Because the New Age also believe in a higher thing. The Hindus, largely, let's just generalize it as the Eastern or Oriental religions, they also believe in something higher. Well, New Age would talk of a higher, not being, not God, but a higher force, a higher energy. They say that energy, Christians call God, all right? Some New Age who are also materialists would call it Mother Nature. So they say the higher energy is Mother Nature. You may have heard of these advertisements, Mother Nature is angry. Yeah? We have offended Mother Nature by overcutting trees and whatnot, overplowing. Mother Nature is upset by dumping waste into the rivers like they're doing in the Lake Victoria now. Okay? We have upset Mother Nature, and Mother Nature is reacting. How is she reacting? There is more rivers breaking their banks. There's more volcanic activity now. There is a bit more global warming. Rains are no longer predictable. This is Mother Nature punishing us. So Mother Nature is the higher power. You would remember the late Professor Wangari Maathai, Nobel Peace Laureate. Wangari Maathai, who led the Green Belt movement, which is still here today with us, though Wangari is dead, used to go to Karura Forest and she would embrace the trees and kiss them. It's almost insane, isn't it? And she would be there closing her eyes and she would say, when I'm in these trees here, when I'm in this environment of nature, I am interacting with Mother Nature, with something greater than us. And I can feel one with the elements, that's the word. I am one with the elements of nature. The rivers are flowing, the trees are swashing, and I'm there, so we are one. So they also believe in something higher, but it is not personal. There is as well this idea, and we've talked about it. Remember we talked of pantheism? Pantheism? No? Any bell ringing? Pantheism? What is pantheism? Come on, people. All is God. Thank you very much. Pan means all. Theos, God. Pantheism. All is God. We are all part of God. We are all fragments of God. The tree, the human being, the stone, whatever. All of that is part of God. So the higher power is all of us together. We make God. And the process of evolution, particularly intellectual and religious evolution, is supposed to take us to that God awareness. We become aware of the God in us. And as we become more aware of the God in us and you become more aware of the God in you, we come together, we are putting God together like a jigsaw puzzle. And there will be a day when God is complete. So we together are the higher power. But what we're saying is, we as Christians recognize not just that there is a higher power, but that higher power is a person. Has a personality. Has a being. So we say he is personal. He relates. He is the God of the Bible. He is Jehovah. He speaks with his people. He leads his people. He saves his people. One of these days, he will have a communion, unending, unbreaking fellowship with his people in heaven itself. That God is revealed to us in the Bible. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that higher being, which we call God, relates with his creatures. He is not removed from his creatures. Are we together? He is not divorced from his creature. From his creatures. He is intimately and actively engaging with them. Here's what the Bible says about that God, this high authority, this personal high authority, who is a prime mover of our ethics, is that in fact this God says that he knows us before we are born. He ordains not just that we will be born, Psalm 139, before my bones were framed in my mother's womb, you had ordained me, you put me together in my mother's womb. That's how involved he is. Not only does he put us together in the way of creation, that God has already numbered our days. Is that right? Psalm 90. Teach me the number of my days. Isaiah 46 verse 9 to 10. He declares the end from the beginning. So he has created us with every detail, but he has also numbered our lives. He has created us. He has numbered our lives. But ladies and gentlemen, he also knows how we will end. And that's Isaiah 46, 9 to 10. He knows how we will end. But between our creation and our end, between our creation and our end, between our birth and our death, all the events that will happen in between here are already carefully planned out by that higher power. So much so that Jesus says to the disciples, not even a hair on your head will fall without me noticing it. You knocked your toe on a stone today, he saw it. He knew you would do it. Did your hair fall today when you were combing? Some hair was left in the comb. He knows the number of the hairs that were left in the comb. So listen, ladies and gentlemen, he not only creates us, knows our end, but has planned out our days. He is aware of everything that goes on within our lives. That awareness shapes our reaction to issues. God is never away from the picture. Never. Never away from the picture. I am sick. God is somewhere here. My wife died. God is somewhere here. I am poor, God is somewhere here. I am rich, God is somewhere here. So I'm always thinking in the light of God. So you bring that mindset, you bring that reality to the counseling room, don't you? The reality of God. So I'm thinking, okay, this lady is barren. She wants children. Where is God in the whole situation? As I talk to her, do I simply say, sister, don't worry, by faith, we will declare, by faith. In fact, go buy children clothes. In fact, I've already seen it's a girl. Buy girl clothes. No, I'm telling you, we have a lady in our church who has struggled with that for maybe about 15, 17 years. And has gone through all this, and when she was saying it, my heart was broken a million pieces. Can you believe a preacher telling you, buy these clothes, you buy them, they're there. 9 months later, there's nothing. Another one comes and says, no, you haven't raised the altar. That means you haven't given a good offering. So you're looking for 50,000, you pay. You're hoping for that miracle, it never happens. Somebody comes and tells you, look, sister, you're living in sin. There's a sin in your life unconfessed. You look for that sin. You confess. You even say, Lord, if I've forgotten, look for it and please remove it. Nothing. Do you see what you're putting these people through? It's a very cruel thing to do to a woman. A very cruel thing to do. Mundumlosi, the preacher. I'm telling you, it's really bad. But where is God? But when you read Genesis 29 and 30, you read that the Lord had closed the womb of Rachel. Is that true? It's written. The Lord, Jehovah, had closed, and then there came a time the Lord opened that womb. Penina, in the story of Hannah and what was the husband? You're the ones accusing this guy of speaking slowly. You're not Elkanah. Yes. Again, Elkanah, when these ladies said, am I God? If I become God to you, to give you children? Because it's God who gives children. So where is God in our counseling? Where is this idea that God is involved in this thing? Sometimes we even think God is not aware. It's like the devil has sneaked in. He sneaked in. I think God was taking care of people in America. And this devil sneaked in here and brought this. So we must, God saw it. And God allowed it. Mm-hmm. So the preacher, the counselor, is going to be walking through, okay, let us find out. What might God be doing here in this situation? There is a lovely sister in Australia. I think she's now 43, maybe 44. She's wanted a child for so long. Good thing, of course, I'm sure she went through many people who prophesied and blah, 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 blah. And I've been to countries where people are praying for her. After many years, over 15, I believe, finally, she's pregnant now, so to speak. The Lord. No binding, no losing, no tracing of ancestral curse, no nothing like that. It's simply, sister, the Lord knows your life. Have faith in Him, but if His will is for you not to have a child of your own, there are many children who require mothers. Maybe God wants you to adopt and take care of others. Settle. Job, is a story that is fascinating, isn't it? Because the people, the word of faith preachers, Job's wife and the 3 friends, they only have one mind. We will bind and loose. We will fast and pray until God does something. God do something. Fanya kitu. What? He's already done it. So, do imagine this, if you will, brothers and sisters. 7 daughters. Is it 7 sons? 3 daughters. Whatever now. 3, 7. 10 children. 3,000 camel. I don't know. 6,000 sheep. Gone. One following the other. I mean, if there is an example of a curse, these things are, and the man, his own body, in fact, is beaten now. He's sick. The wife says, curse God and die. You know God's against you. You know that. I mean, Job, first it was your animals. If you doubted God was against you, look, your children. You are doubting, now look, your health. And the other ones are coming and say, Job, without a cause, a curse cannot come. That's what they preach to him. This thing cannot happen to you without a reason. There is something in your life. Isn't this the way? I mean, seriously, the Bible records these things, yet they're the same things we do to people. In verse 21 of chapter 1, Job says, that which I'm telling you now. The Lord gave. The Lord has taken. Blessed be the name. There is a higher personal authority who in the end is in charge, in control of the tiniest detail of our lives. When I was in the salon cutting my fingernails, he was there. He saw when that needle pricked my hand. He saw that. When the HIV was coming into my body, he saw it and allowed it. Difficult to put in our minds, yes? Because of old theology that has become a matope. You understand? It may kwamisha hiyo pipe. Lots of mud. So unless we flush out the mud so that we are free in our thinking to think afresh. So that is the first motivator, the move of our ethics, how we respond to situations at a personal level and as we seek to help other people in terms of their going throughs. We recognize that higher authority. But thirdly then, no, secondly, Christian or biblical ethics are regulated by the fact Christian or biblical ethics are regulated by the fact that we have moral obligations. We have moral obligations. Christian or biblical ethics regulated by the fact that we have moral obligations and accountability to that higher personal authority. That we have moral obligations and accountability to that higher personal authority. Christian or biblical ethics are regulated by the fact that we have moral obligations and accountability to that higher personal authority. We are morally accountable So we first of all recognize that authority exists, yes? Remember I told you, the materialist, the naturalist, the scientist in that way proceeds from the fact that there is no God. So there is no accountability anywhere. Our behavior is regulated. That higher personal authority has told us how to live. Is that correct? What are the Ten Commandments? Are they not how the higher authority has told us how to live? You see, where there are laws, there are also responsibilities. And where there are responsibilities, there is also accountability. I'm going to say that again. Where there are laws, there are responsibilities. And where there are responsibilities, there is also accountability. In this respect, particularly, we are talking about God who has created us, who sustains our lives, at whose pleasure we live. In fact, in Acts of the Apostles, chapters 17, verse 24 to 28, particularly verse 28, it says, in Him, that is in God, we live and move and have our being. Acts 17:28. In Him, that is God, we live, we move, and have our being. Outside of Him, we don't exist. This God has given the 10 what? Suggestions? Commandments, not suggestions. This is how you will live. So that the Christian is not living in a vacuum where he has to invent a code of ethics. The way he must behave has been given to him. So I'm counseling a wife who has stepped outside of a marriage in unfaithfulness. Well, I have a code, don't I? She has a code given by a higher personal authority. We don't say, oh no, sorry, you're Maasai. Oh, sorry. If you're a Maasai, we must talk differently, because in Maasai, when your wives are to be shared among the age group. So, no, you don't say that, do you? There's a higher personal authority who has given us a code of ethics. Doesn't matter my culture now. Doesn't matter my worldview. In fact, my worldview should be this: that there is a higher authority. That authority, I have moral obligations to him, and therefore accountability to him. Now listen, where there is law, there is responsibility. Where there is responsibility, there is accountability. And where there is accountability, my friend, there will be punishment or reward. That's the third thing that I'm presenting to you in terms of our ethics. That we proceed from the fact that good will be rewarded and bad will be punished. Good will be rewarded, bad will be punished. So there is an incentive, there is a motivator. And here we must return to that whole conversation about heaven and hell versus the whole concept of nihilism. By the way, the scientific, the naturalist, and the the scientific, the naturalist, the materialist worldview is also a nihilistic worldview. Nihilist, Nihilist. Nihilist. These are people who believe that in fact there will be no everlasting life. Therefore there will be no hell or heaven. We shall just be annihilated, destroyed. We are just chemicals at the end of the day. When this body, 80 or 90 or 100, the chemicals dissolve. They go back to the earth. They become humus. They become manure for some other plant. And so we have been annihilated. There will be no us any longer. The spiritist, the animist, all right? The mystic, like the Oriental religions, might talk about reincarnation. Or we only come back in another form in this life. I was born a woman, in the next life I'll be born a man. I was born a dog, in the next life I'll be born a cat. And so on and so forth. No, we believe there is an end. And the end ushers us into an everlasting future. A future without end. And there will be hell and heaven. So our ethic becomes an ethic of punishment and reward. Now that is at the grand level where we're talking about ultimate destinies, whether it be in heaven or in hell. But it also dictates how we raise our children. I say all the time, children must be raised to know good will be rewarded, bad will be punished. They must. And that is why I've always argued, especially when I'm talking to women in our church and other places. If you discipline a child, don't embrace them immediately. And don't appear to be apologizing. You know that you're just good, but the other thing you did, I'm sorry I punished you so strongly. You know, you've cancelled what you did. You've cancelled it. Because what you've done is you've given a punishment, but you've given a reward as well. So it's good will be rewarded, bad will be punished. It's a good ethic. That is how we must relate. I have employees, for example, in my home. I have the gardener, then I have the housemaid. Usually, bad will be punished. Well, I don't punish them, of course, physically, but I'll just withhold some things from you. Oh, you've served me so well. I say, look, we're going to give you a raise, for example. I've done that several actually. I think from next month, we're giving you a raise because you're embracing more than we had thought you'd be doing. You know, you're doing more, so it's just okay that we do that. So it's an ethic we have. We are not people who are trying to oppress other people. We are saying if there's something good, we will recognize that it's good. And we will make sure the person knows that we know that they've done well. And then people are always motivated, isn't it? Always motivated. The maid I have now, I think we've kept for the last 3 years, which is something in my house actually. And part of the relationship is, she's worked so hard, really hard. I don't believe I've had a maid like that in all our lives. She's excellent, really good. Never complains. She's always on top of things, always on top of things. So she had this daughter who was admitted at Hospital General. I went to Nairobi, and my wife told me, do you know she's in hospital? Yes, and she's been discharged, yet they are having a deficit of 6,000 shillings, and they should be released. They've been there 3 days, they're still looking for money. I passed by the hospital, cleared the bill, and then I came back home. She's never forgotten. Never forgotten. Never forgotten. The other day, a kid was being operated on something. I said, no, take days off. It's fine. We will not die. Go take care of your child. And then you come back. So when she comes, she's working. You know, she's supposed to leave my place at 4:30. Usually she stays beyond 6. Are you not going home today? No, there's this thing, I don't want it to be here. Tomorrow it will have... No, she has reasons why she must do this thing. So I'm getting more value than I'm paying for. More value than I'm paying for. Because she's doing this thing from the heart. Reward. Reward. It's an ethic we have. And so, that also then guides our ethical expressions. I want to stop there now, then. These three things that I've talked about, the realization of a high authority, our moral obligation, accountability to that authority, the reward and punishment motif, these are the relations which the creature sustains to the high authority. Okay? The high authority. Now when you come from the break, I want to discuss then the constituent elements of biblical or Christian ethics. Alright? The constituent elements. Those things that constitute the Christian ethic. So you see that this subject is very wide, isn't it? We're always finding things there. And this is to help you develop an ethic around your life, a definable ethic that you can work with, that people can identify. That's the way you operate. So to take a break, please. And when we come back, we want to discuss that. And then we will be done with Unit 01 and get to 02 now. Okay? This is simply foundations for ethics. That's all we're discussing up until now. Sort of still introductory parts of this thing here. Thank you very much.